Vivian St. Clair had everything society deemed valuable: beauty, wealth, and influence. She had been born into a life of opulence in the affluent neighborhood of Greenwich, Connecticut. Her father, Jonathan St. Clair, was a high-profile corporate attorney who frequently graced the pages of business magazines. Her mother, Eloise, was a socialite whose primary occupation was managing the St. Clair household and organizing high society galas. Together, they ensured that their only daughter never wanted for anything. From the moment Vivian could walk, her life was curated to reflect her parents' aspirations. Ponies for her 10th birthday, designer wardrobes before she turned 16, and vacations to the most exclusive resorts in Europe were just a few of the indulgences that filled her formative years. Private tutors polished her education, while etiquette coaches refined her demeanor, ensuring she presented herself as the perfect young debutante. However, alongside these luxuries, a sense of entitlement took root in Vivian. Her privilege fostered an unwavering belief that she was destined for greatness by virtue of her last name alone. By her late 20s, she was convinced that the world revolved around her whims and achievements, regardless of how she treated others. At 29, Vivian was on the verge of what she saw as her greatest accomplishment: a promotion to vice president of marketing at Lexington & Co., a prestigious Manhattan firm. Her goal was not born of a passion for marketing or a desire to lead, but rather an insatiable need to assert her superiority. To her, success was simply another trophy to display, a means to remind others of her self-perceived greatness. To Vivian, Leonard Matthews was nothing more than a janitor, a faceless figure with no bearing on her world. But Leonard was a man whose life experience and resilience dwarfed the challenges Vivian had ever faced. Born in a working-class neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia, Leonard grew up with big dreams and an unshakable work ethic. After serving in the military, he returned home and used his savings to start Matthews Construction, a small company specializing in residential and commercial projects. Over the next 15 years, Leonard built his business into a cornerstone of the community, offering jobs to those often overlooked: ex-convicts seeking a fresh start, single parents juggling work and childcare, and young people eager to learn a trade. For Leonard, his work was more than a business. It was a mission to uplift others. His company thrived until the Great Recession hit. Contracts dried up, debts mounted, and Leonard was forced to shutter his business. With the loss of his company came personal tragedies. His marriage fell apart under the strain, and he had to sell his home. Determined to rebuild, Leonard moved to New York City in search of work. He took a janitorial position at Lexington & Co., a job that paid just enough to cover his modest apartment in the Bronx, and send a portion to his daughter, Mia, who was studying nursing in Atlanta. Despite his circumstances, Leonard carried himself with quiet dignity, believing that hardship was a test of character. He approached every task, no matter how small, with the same commitment and care that had defined his career. The first encounter between Vivian and Leonard was as inevitable as it was telling. It occurred on a stormy Monday morning in September, the kind of day where the weather seemed to conspire against everyone's plans. Rain poured relentlessly, soaking the streets of Manhattan and testing the patience of its commuters. Vivian stormed into the sleek glass lobby of Lexington & Co., her designer heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She was late for an important meeting, her frustration compounded by a spilled latte that had stained her silk blouse. Her umbrella, now useless, dripped water onto her designer bag, further souring her mood. In the center of the lobby, Leonard was on his knees, scrubbing the floor near the elevators. A bright yellow caution sign stood prominently beside him, but Vivian didn't notice, or didn't care. "Are you serious right now?" she snapped, her voice sharp and accusing. Leonard looked up calmly, his movements deliberate as he continued cleaning. "Good morning, ma'am," he said. "I'll be out of your way in just a second." "Just a second isn't good enough," Vivian replied, her tone dripping with impatience. "Do you realize people like me have real jobs to get to? You're slowing everyone down." Several employees entering the lobby froze mid-step, their eyes darting between Vivian and Leonard. The tension was palpable. Leonard, however, remained unshaken. He nodded politely and shifted slightly to give Vivian room to pass. As she walked by, she muttered loudly, "Maybe if people like him worked harder, they wouldn't be stuck cleaning floors." The words stung. Leonard had heard such dismissive remarks before, but they carried a sharper edge in the polished setting of Lexington & Co. Nevertheless, he chose not to respond. His mother's teachings echoed in his mind. You don't need to fight every battle. Your dignity will speak for you. Vivian's dismissive behavior toward Leonard wasn't an isolated incident. Over the following weeks, she seemed to take a particular pleasure in making his work more difficult. One morning, she knocked over her half-full coffee cup near his cleaning cart. "Oops," she said with a smirk. "Guess you've got something to do now." Another time, she left a pile of papers on the floor of her office with a sticky note attached that read, "Clean this up ASAP." Despite her antics, Leonard maintained his composure. He would respond with a polite, "Yes, ma'am," and proceed to do his job without complaint. For Leonard, reacting to Vivian's provocations wasn't worth compromising his peace of mind. Vivian's behavior, however, extended beyond Leonard. Her main rival for the VP promotion, Laura Kendrick, bore the brunt of her underhanded tactics. Laura was everything Vivian wasn't: collaborative, empathetic, and respected by both her peers and subordinates. While Vivian thrived on competition, Laura inspired loyalty. To Vivian, Laura's rise in the company was a direct threat. She undermined Laura at every opportunity, taking credit for her ideas and sowing seeds of doubt in their superiors. Yet Laura remained steadfast, refusing to stoop to Vivian's level. The opportunity to humiliate both Leonard and Laura came during a high-profile client meeting. Determined to assert her dominance, Vivian orchestrated a spill near the entrance to the conference room, knowing Leonard would be called to clean it up. As Leonard mopped the floor, Vivian turned to the clients and said with a condescending laugh, "Imagine this. You're here to discuss multi-million-dollar campaigns, and this is the view you get." The clients exchanged uneasy glances, clearly uncomfortable with her tone. Laura, sitting across the table, couldn't remain silent. "Vivian, that was unnecessary," Laura said firmly. "Oh, please," Vivian scoffed. "I'm just being honest. He's here to do a job, and I'm doing mine." Leonard straightened, his eyes meeting Vivian's. His voice was calm, but carried an undeniable strength. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm just doing what's asked of me. I hope you can say the same." The room fell silent. For the first time, Vivian felt a flicker of unease, but she quickly dismissed it. What she didn't know was that a junior employee had recorded the entire exchange on their phone. The fallout from the client meeting was swift and unforgiving. By the next morning, the video of Vivian's comment had spread through the office like wildfire. It was shared discreetly at first, passed from phone to phone, accompanied by hushed whispers. But soon, it reached the company's leadership team. Vivian's words, paired with Leonard's calm and dignified response, painted a stark picture of who she was beneath her polished exterior. HR summoned Vivian to a formal meeting that afternoon. She walked into the conference room with her usual confidence, expecting a routine conversation. Instead, she was met with cold, scrutinizing faces. The head of HR didn't mince words. "Miss St. Clair, your behavior has been brought to our attention. This video," they held up a tablet displaying the recording, "is not only unprofessional, but completely unacceptable. It reflects poorly on you and this company." Vivian bristled, her temper flaring. "It's just a misunderstanding. People are too sensitive these days. I didn't mean anything by it." The HR director's tone hardened. "Intent doesn't erase impact, Miss St. Clair. Your conduct has not only embarrassed this company, but created a toxic environment for our employees." Vivian left the meeting furious, her indignation burning as she replayed the conversation in her head. But her anger couldn't shield her from the consequences. Colleagues began avoiding her. Clients requested to work exclusively with Laura Kendrick, and her once solid reputation crumbled under the weight of her own actions. A week later, the CEO called a company-wide meeting to announce the promotion. Vivian arrived early, dressed in her sharpest designer suit. She took a seat near the front, her head held high. Despite the backlash, she was certain the promotion would be hers. After all, wasn't she the most qualified? Wasn't she the most deserving? The CEO stood at the podium, his expression neutral as he scanned the room. "Today, we're proud to announce the promotion of a new vice president of marketing, someone who exemplifies leadership, collaboration, and respect. Please join me in congratulating Laura Kendrick." The room erupted in applause. Vivian sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. The blood drained from her face as the realization sank in. The promotion was not hers. Laura, smiling modestly, rose from her seat to accept the congratulations of her colleagues. Vivian, meanwhile, felt the walls closing in around her. After the meeting, Vivian stormed into the CEO's office. "This is a mistake," she exclaimed. "You're letting a janitor ruin my career." The CEO's response was calm but cutting. "No, Miss St. Clair. You ruined your career. Leonard Matthews has shown more professionalism and integrity than you ever have. If you can't treat people with respect, you don't belong here." While Vivian's world unraveled, Leonard's life took an unexpected turn. The CEO, impressed by his resilience and dedication, promoted him to facilities manager. The new role came with better pay, benefits, and the opportunity to mentor other employees. For Leonard, it was a moment of validation, a recognition of his character and hard work. But Leonard didn't stop there. He used his increased salary to start a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, inspired by his daughter's journey through nursing school. The fund, named the Matthews Foundation, aimed to give young people the chance to pursue their dreams, no matter their circumstances. At the first charity gala hosted by the foundation, Leonard stood at the podium, humbled by the support he had received. Laura Kendrick, now a VP, gave a heartfelt speech about how Leonard's integrity had inspired her. The room erupted in applause as Leonard's journey came full circle. Months after losing her job, Vivian sat in her small apartment, scrolling through social media. Her once busy calendar was empty, her inbox devoid of job offers. The recording of her comments had followed her, tarnishing her reputation and making her name synonymous with arrogance and entitlement. That evening, as she scrolled, she stumbled upon photos from the Matthews Foundation Gala. She saw Leonard standing proudly at the podium, surrounded by colleagues who respected him. The caption beneath the photo read, "A true testament to the power of resilience and kindness." For the first time, Vivian felt the full weight of her actions. She realized how her cruelty had not only hurt others, but also robbed her of meaningful connections. The world she had built on superiority and status had crumbled, leaving her alone with her regrets. Months turned into years. Vivian, humbled by her experiences, began to rebuild her life. She found a position at a small firm where she was no longer the center of attention. Slowly, she started to change, not because she wanted to regain her former status, but because she finally understood the value of humility. Leonard, meanwhile, continued to thrive. The Matthews Foundation grew, providing scholarships to dozens of students. His journey became a source of inspiration for everyone who worked at Lexington & Co., a reminder that integrity and kindness would always prevail over arrogance. Vivian and Leonard's paths crossed one last time, years later, at a community event. Vivian approached him hesitantly, her voice quiet. "Mr. Matthews, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything." Leonard smiled, his warmth undiminished. "Life has a way of teaching us, Miss St. Clair. I hope it's been kind to you." It wasn't forgiveness that she sought, it was the hope that she could become someone better. And in that moment, she realized she still had the chance to do so.